Did you know that Ford sales have plummeted this year? Polestar and Maserati are also down. Even Porsche sales have fallen significantly. Tesla's another one. Meanwhile, the biggest gains of the year were made by, well, BYD. And when I say big, it's actually staggering. And Jeep has also seen a bit of a jump too, which is in contrast to some of its Stellantis co-brands, I should say. So what gives? What is going on? Well, overall, the market is indeed struggling. UK production, of course, is also down. Now, it is a transition year for many car companies, not only in terms of them moving over to electric models or introducing electric models into their ranges, but also making the transition between generational models, so changing model years and stuff like that. So that also has an impact. And then, of course, we're still in a cost of living crisis. Now, the following information that I'm going to share with you is based on SMMT, which is Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders. It's based on their data for the year to date till September. Obviously, I'm filming this in middle of October. And of course, yes, there are 3 months left for the 2024 data. But frankly, people are counting their pennies as we're approaching Christmas. Energy bills are going up, water rates are set to rise, and of course, the biggest dread of all for everybody is the Chancellor's budget that's going to be revealed at the end of this month. And it's almost certain that there will be a hike in fuel taxes in that budget. And this is just as petrol prices had finally started to come down to a reasonable level again. Plus, there's also the possibility of pay per mile rearing its ugly head, maybe even within that budget, because there is pressure on the Chancellor to introduce it for electric cars to make up for the lost revenue because they don't pay VED or road tax as it's known. I did a separate video on that, and you can check out more detail on that in that video. Anyway, the point is, I don't exactly see sales increasing in the last 2 months. So I think it's fair to look at the whole year in terms of the data that we've got currently. So what's going on with the biggest losers of 2024? Why are some of the strongest brands on the market just really seeming to struggle? Well, let's break that down, and we'll do it right after this.
A brown car guy.
So let's obviously look at some of the biggest losers first of all in this. And it's fair to say that I think some of these names are going to surprise you. Ford is down 23.3%. Ford once ruled the top spots in the sales charts, and yet that is down by nearly a quarter. It seems a real shocker. But on the other hand, what can you buy from Ford now, right? The Fiesta has gone, Mondeo has gone, Focus is still there, but it's on run out. What you actually have now, even if you go to their website, you've got a bunch of SUVs. Some of them are electric. So that's all that you have left on there. Interestingly, the best seller for them is the smallest of those SUVs, is the Ford Puma. So that kind of relates to the sort of cars that were normally big sellers for them. They do have, of course, the Ford Mustang Mach-E electric SUV, and it is pretty good actually, I like it. But Ford clearly feel that they can't compete with the onslaught of EVs from China, so they have resorted to tying up with the likes of Volkswagen for their new range of EVs. So that new Ford Explorer EV, for example, is based on the ID platform from the Volkswagen Group. So it's the MEB platform that they use for their EV cars. And of course, Ford has kind of really alienated UK Ford fans by sticking the fabled Capri name on a new EV SUV too. And it'll be very interesting to see if they can make a success of that, or if they end up quietly killing it off at some point. And also, if you think about the fact, and I made a recent video on this, Ford's bosses announcing that the company is really going to be focusing now on big ticket cars and pretty much abandoning the mass market. A market which is actually their creation, if you think about it. I mean, the Model T was the ultimate mass market car. So it doesn't seem like their sales situation is going to improve much, I think, because of the fact that they're moving away from the mass market and focusing on things like trucks in America and SUVs over here, and the Mustang, which is, of course, the world's best-selling sports car. It's a real shame, because Ford is such a big part of the car scene in the UK. So that's going to be a tough one to sort of come to terms with. But hey, at least they have said that they will keep making V8 Mustangs until they're not allowed to do so anymore. Polestar is down 37.13%. Now that one is a bit of a surprise. Polestar, which is the offshoot of Volvo, it's often seen as the cool kid of the EV world. And yet, you've got that 37% drop. So what's happening? Well, Polestar has been riding high on the EV wave, but EV sales in general have been struggling. So that could be a price war. It hasn't helped. A price war that was started at the beginning of last year by Tesla. And the higher production costs, for example, Polestar, which is, like I said, offshoot of Volvo, they use quality materials, they use quality items, so there's a higher production cost. And of course, that means that price cutting is really going to hurt them quite a lot. Even though it's Chinese owned, it costs money to build them. High-end EVs tend to be struggling in general anyway, and Polestar seems to have been hit particularly hard because of that. However, having said that, they have introduced new models. So Polestar 2, I think, at the end of last year, and Polestar 4 this year. So let's see how that does for them. It may actually boost their sales a bit. The downward pressure on premium EVs has also hit Tesla. It is down 8.98%, but I think there's a number of reasons for that. Tesla obviously was way ahead of the game when it came to EVs. But several things have happened. Firstly, other car companies have caught up and they are making equally, if not more desirable premium EVs than Tesla has. And of course, Tesla's kind of been found out as a sort of, if you like, pretend car maker, which has been putting out, in my opinion, I would say substandard quality product compared to mainstream cars. And also compared to what the market expects and demands these days. But there's also something else going on, and it involves politics. And frankly, Tesla owner Elon Musk's increasingly right-wing politics and ardent support for Donald Trump has, I think, actually seen people, well, actually not I think, but this is a fact. It's because of that people, certainly in America, have actually been cancelling their orders on Teslas. And I think maybe some of that is filtering through to here. Politics and automotive shouldn't really mix, because when it does, it can be disastrous for car companies, as we're seeing with this. But on the other hand, Tesla fans will continue, and they are proper loyal fans, and they will continue to be loyal to the brand. So don't be surprised to see Tesla sales pick up again, but there may be further price drops, I reckon, next year. Oh, sorry to interrupt. Are you enjoying the video? Well, make sure you've punched the like button. It helps. Now, I think Audi is in the same sort of problem in terms of that premium EV issue that they're having. It's probably one of the most prominent of the German luxury big three that went big on EVs quite early on with their e-tron generation of cars. And like I said, I think it's suffering for the same reason. As mentioned also in a recent video, there's another thing that has happened with Audi, and I think what's happened is that they're confusing their buyers, because they switched their naming conventions. So what's happened now is that all the EVs will have even numbers in their naming convention, and ICE, petrol and diesel cars, will have odd numbers. So the really popular models like the Audi A4 and the Audi A6 are no longer petrol and diesel. They're now electric. So you can imagine regular buyers sort of going into the dealers going, okay, I want to trade up my car to the new one, only to be told, well, it's electric now. And they're like, what? And they just end up walking out in bewilderment and not understanding that there is obviously an A5 and an A7. I think there's also kind of an EV limbo thing going on here as well. Audi's models are expensive, but they're not quite to the desirability and premium level of, say, Mercedes and Porsche. And don't forget, Porsche, pretty much the mechanicals are the same on the Porsche and the Audis. So the thing is that if people are willing to pay that much money, they pay a little bit more, they just end up with a Porsche. You'd rather have a Porsche, wouldn't you? Because at the end of the day, it's a Porsche. And on the other hand, if you're budget conscious, then you'll think, well, I'll just get a Volkswagen ID something or other, because again, it shares similar mechanicals. And Audi is kind of stuck in that uncertain middle ground. So, and obviously within the Volkswagen group, technically it's not even allowed to compete directly with Porsche or with Volkswagen. So I really don't know what is going to get Audi out of this conundrum. It'll be interesting to see what it does next year. On the other hand, though, talking of Porsche, that has actually had the second biggest drop of all of the brands that I've mentioned so far. In fact, it's down by 27.66%. That is another shocker. It's nearly 28%. And frankly, this one is also very hard to explain. It's surprising to see Porsche suffering such a big sales drop. Now, it could be because high-end sports cars will get hit and do get hit when times are hard. I mean, don't get me wrong, Porsches are, of course, hideously expensive. They're way, way more expensive than they used to be and that they should be, I think. But they're not quite in the realm of Ferrari or Lamborghini. Plus, they're also durable, they're reliable, they're daily drivable. So those people who are doing really well will think, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to stretch my leasing agreement because I'll get a Porsche because I can just use it. Then I'll have, even if it's just a Macan or Cayenne, but you get a Porsche keyring. So whether you get the family moving Cayenne or the Macan, or you get a Taken luxury EV, or of course you want the iconic 911 or even the Boxster and the Cayman sports cars, it's a case of getting a practical premium product. By the way, the other thing is that the Cayman and the Boxster are also being killed off. I'll explain that again in another video. That's for other reasons. And maybe that is also having an impact on their sales. Anyway, the point is that when times are hard and bills are high, those who normally would have gone, okay, I can just stretch a bit further and I can get a Porsche, might well be going, let me just stay my hand a little bit and hold on to the existing car that I have, or maybe just buy a VW instead. On the other hand, there's another aspect to this, and that is that sports car makers, one of the reasons that you want to go for a sports car is to experience proper neck snapping acceleration every time you press down on that throttle pedal. But that's not necessarily the case that you have to buy a sports car anymore. Not when a Volkswagen ID.3 GTX Performance will accelerate to 62 miles per hour in under 6 seconds, 5.7 seconds in fact. And in fact, it will feel even more ferocious off the line. So it feels incredibly quick and crazy, as a lot of EVs do. And you get all of that from a normal urban family car. So if you get that from that, then what do you need the Porsche for? What about other drops? Oh yeah, there have been quite a few, and even bigger ones actually. Ineos, that make those Land Rover spiritual successors, if you like, 66.4%. But there's been a well-publicized parts supply issue with them. And we're not talking huge numbers here. Last year they sold 738 cars. This year they're about 500 down. Bentley's down 40.96%, but again, they have been switching between model generations, and we're talking a loss of only about 300 cars in reality here anyway. Similarly, Genesis, which is the luxury arm of Hyundai, that is down 18.19%, but again, that's only about 200 cars in real terms. And that's also, it's a brand that frankly struggles because of low recognition and understanding in the UK market, despite the fact that they are actually excellent products, and I've reviewed them. You can check them out on my channel. Mini is down 8.75%. Again, there have been model changes this year, and perhaps there's been some confusion because the main mini hatchback thing, there's a new model came out, but initially came out as an EV. It is available as a petrol car, but that came later. So maybe buyers just kind of held off until they figured out what was going on. Now, Toyota has more of a surprise. That's down 6.74%, and that equates to nearly 6,000 cars from a total sales number. Year to date, they've sold 79,000 cars. And this is a company that's been resisting the pressure to go full EV. They've only just introduced their first EV, I think it was last year. So, and also they're introducing EVs to their higher end Lexus brand as well. So overall, what's happening with Toyota is it's a bit of a hard one to explain, but it could be the owners of Toyotas are just holding on a little longer to their rugged and reliable Toyotas in order to just put off big purchases, because times are tough. Toyota, of course, has been supporting petrol and hybrid, and it's been working hard, obviously, to inject some fun back into their cars. And they've been coming out with sports cars, and the 86, the Supra, maybe the Celica is coming back. So I hope this is all just a short-term blip. But having said that, it's not going to make a huge difference to what is one of the world's biggest car companies. Let's be honest. And talking of big car companies, what about Stellantis? Its very resolute move towards electrification, I think, is causing it to struggle a little bit because most of its major brands, at least here in the UK, were down. So DS was down by 50.10%, Fiat 17.8%, Vauxhall 16.52%, and Citroën 2.25%. Meanwhile, Maserati, which introduced or reintroduced the gorgeous Gran Turismo, also now as an electric car and a 6-cylinder petrol car, but not a V8 anymore, well, that was down too. That was down 45.43%. To be fair, the group's other big brand, Peugeot, that was actually up by 9.73%, so it wasn't all doom and gloom for Stellantis. But it does suggest that manufacturers throwing all their eggs into the EV basket are suffering badly in terms of sales. Hi guys, I've been writing. This is my first book, a novel, an all-out action thriller, and this one is a collection of 13 stories I've written over the course of 2 decades. The Ulysses Files and The Quantum Races by BC Guy are out now on Amazon.com. So let's just see if there were any big winners this year. Well, yeah, I mean, BYD was up by a staggering 1,000%. That's 1,082.02% to be exact. But to be fair, it's a brand new brand that only really established itself in the market last year, and it went from 445 sales to over 5,000 sales this year so far. And they are actually just ramping up their activities. They've just introduced an SUV, which I've reviewed, that's on the channel, and I reckon they are set to just continue growing at a very rapid rate next year. I think they have, really cracked the code on almost kind of affordable and practical, and I would say to an extent with the Seal Saloon, for example, desirable EVs. Remember Smart? You'd be forgiven for forgetting them, but they seem to be making a bit of a comeback, up 387%. That's a surprise to me too. Frankly, the brand just really isn't on my radar anymore. I thought it was half dead, but clearly I've done them a disservice because even though they only have 2 models, both of them EVs, and they're not really small cars anymore, it seems. But in real terms, they're doing well, although that's just under 1,400 cars more this year than last year. Worth keeping an eye on, I reckon. Jeep's another surprise. Perhaps because it's part of the Stellantis group, which we've already said appears to have been really struggling. However, Jeep has experienced 155% sales increase here in the UK. Now, it did introduce a new model, the Avenger, and the Avenger is available as a petrol, a hybrid, and of course as an EV as well. And it has a low entry price from £24,000, which means it actually undercuts the now relatively ungainly looking Renegade, which used to be the smallest Jeep before. Plus, I would really like to know what's happening with Wrangler sales, how that's doing, because considering that Land Rover with the Defender, that's become now like an upmarket luxury car, I wonder if those that really need a hardcore mud-plugging car are buying the Wrangler instead. I mean, it could be, right? Because when it comes to off-roading, it still remains the real deal, that's for sure. So what does it all mean for the car market in 2024? Well, legacy brands like Ford, Audi, and Stellantis are clearly struggling to adapt to the changing landscape, even though companies like Stellantis really reckon they were ahead of the game by really going EVs early and big scale. But they are struggling, and that much is apparent. And as I've said frequently before, most of the car industry is frankly flailing about trying to figure out things such as, well, on the one hand, they've got demands from consumers. It seems to be completely contradictory to the draconian legislations that governments are imposing on them. So they're kind of they're sort of between a rock and a hard place, quite literally. And they're trying to juggle that and figure out which way they need to go. Meanwhile, the Chinese are moving in, and they're moving in fast. They are cutting edge. They're not caught up by legacy. They're not bothered about the rules and regulations, because they can just adapt and adjust very, very quickly. And of course, they're leading the charge when it comes to EVs. So honestly, I think that we're going to see more and more Chinese cars entering the market and growing. So sadly, it's not looking good for legacy car companies. Honestly, Ford slipping down the sales charts, Audi and Porsche precarious on their premium purchase, and big groups like Stellantis possibly, I would say they might start to look at shedding some of its overblown portfolio. I mean, they've got a lot of brands in that umbrella group, and at some point they might start to go, well, we need to economize a little bit. We can't just keep building the same car with different skins. It doesn't seem to be helping. So we could end up losing some beloved brands if they're not bought by the Chinese, that is, or they could just become small boutique brands or something like that. In the new automotive world order, I think it's the upstart brands from the Far East that are dominating and will continue to dominate and will eventually completely take over the market. I think that's what's going to happen. But anyway, let me know what you think. Are these legacy brands going to bounce back, or are we witnessing the fall of giants? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure that you hit the like button. Make sure you share the video. Make sure you leave a comment, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Shout out time, guys. Thank you so much. Hey, if you enjoy my content, why not get involved? Buy me a coffee. You can do that at either of these links. Or if you're watching on YouTube, buy me a thanks or take out a membership. It all helps. It really does.